The LBX line of buildable figures has quickly become one of my favorite toy lines. Try to imagine this. They have details and design philosophies reminiscent of Gundam figures, but they have the body proportions of a typical Mega Man Zero character. I find this aesthetic very, very charming. These figures typically have a knightly, mythical feel to them, with very few of the models from the first few series boasting guns and other more modern-feeling weapons aside from add-on kits, and their almost childlike build makes them delightfully clunky, yet it's not taken as stupidly far as with super deformed figures, so they're still lithe enough that you can imagine them moving around in a fight much more efficiently. Overall, they're just really fun to look at, and the designs are very well thought out and often beautiful. Over time, the line has improved, but when it comes to the original line of figures, well, they're good, but they had teething troubles, just generally being more robust than the later, more solid and streamlined figures. The more recently released Hyperfunction line greatly improves upon a few of the classic figures and gives them new life, making more complex, stylized, and complete-feeling builds that, when assembled, just look much better and more show and game accurate than their original counterparts. I'll delve into the premise of the line's source material a little bit when I review Hyperfunction Achilles, but for now, we're going to take a look at the fearsome Hyperfunction Emperor. The biggest difference between the Hyperfunction figures and other more traditional LBX figures is the building process. To this day, LBX figures are typically built non-like, say, a Bionicle figure, where you simply attach the limbs with some armor pieces to add some pizzazz. But the Hyperfunction figures are more reminiscent of a Hero Factory figure, in that you first construct a skeleton, which pretty much makes a figure on its own, and then add the armor as a sort of skin. The skeleton of the Emperor looks pretty goofy with its big boxing glove-like hands and scrawny limbs, but we'll beef him up in a bit. First, let's go over the articulation. There are ball joints at the end and base of the neck, and the shoulders are connected to the body by similar double-ended barbell joints and connected to the arms by a hinge-swivel combo. There are two hinge joints in each elbow and knee, allowing them to bend really far back, a swivel joint in the waist, ball and swivel joints in the hips, ball joints in the ankles and wrists, and what just might be my favorite touch of all, well, that's something we'll get to when he's fully armored, but it's pretty cool, trust me. The base of the Emperor is extremely posable, and as much as I'd like for there to be a ball joint in the waist instead of a swivel, the bulk of the armor around the torso would make that pretty much moot. The skeleton itself is made of multiple kinds of plastic, with some parts such as a skull feeling much harder than the joints holding most of the bones together. It's an intriguing system that's pretty accurate to how our own bodies are built, with soft tendons holding our bones together in the same fashion, and the sturdy frame held together by softer bits makes for a great, surprisingly natural-feeling range of posability. I was going to make a speed building video and fast forward through the whole thing, but it was just too much work, so I'll just take a moment to tell you how the building went after this montage, which hopefully won't get the video flagged down. The rest of the building process starts out complicated, but everything comes together nicely sooner or later. Rather than just adding more and more tiny pieces to an already tiny figure one at a time, you build most of the chunks of his armor separately, which are usually made up of 2 to 4 pieces on their own, though sometimes more. Once these pieces are done, you cap the places where the armor is joined with other armor to wrap around the body, and these caps hold all these other pieces together. For every piece that connects to another, there's always yet another that goes over both of them to seal that connection. I was surprised by just how many pieces went into constructing his helmet alone, something that would probably be a single piece on its own in a simplified, Americanized take on it, like a Kanohi mask. I admit, I did get several steps wrong and have to repeat them, mostly because these pieces are so very tiny. Even as helpful as the fully colored instructional booklet is, showing various nuances in the pieces to make it easier to tell how they fit together, from which sides and whatnot, this was a lot of work to put together. Most LBX figures are made of simpler builds, which some people would even call easy depending on who you're talking to, but the Hyperfunction line is something else. In the case of these figures, I can understand people making the argument that this is just too complex for your average American kid to have any hope of comprehending, though I have to wonder why Japanese kids have a much better attention span. and might be smarter. Nonetheless, it was worth the effort, and as the figure came together, I was very satisfied with how the definitive incarnation of the Emperor wound up looking. Donning his armor, the split-second killer Emperor looks amazing, and as bulky as he is, his posability isn't hindered much at all. The inside of the knees and elbows are still given plenty of room to bend, and we even get to see some new points of articulation used in this completed form that I didn't mention before. The 4 components that form his skirt are each attached by a hinge swivel combo joint that not only allows you to spread them apart, but turn them to convey a more realistic sense of motion if you want him to swing his axe a certain way or lunge at someone and have a more windswept look. We also get a lovely cape I'll talk about later that's attached by a similar hinge swivel combo that works the same way, though to even greater effect because of how long it is. Now we get to my favorite point of articulation, which his skeleton feet, the only parts I needed to remove and replace, didn't have. His new feet have articulated toes. This is a great touch, because while ankle tilting on its own already makes it that much easier to pose a figure in interesting lifelike ways, extra joints inside the feet make it possible for a character to actually walk, while a figure with perfectly flat feet would need the soles planted firmly on the ground at all times just to support itself. But this added joint allows for even more poses that just make this guy feel more alive. Sure, this sort of thing is standard for a Sentai figure or something, but it's rare to see in big chunky robot feet on such a small guy, and it's done so well. There are some places with hindered articulation though, mainly around the head. The shoulder armor pieces are huge and make it a little hard to move the arms, but not much. It's something you have to learn to work around, but is forgivable, given that the only ways to fix the shoulder armor would be to make them smaller and less threatening, or to spread them so far apart that they wouldn't cover as much of the skeleton inside, and wouldn't be very good as actual armor. Even so, the head itself isn't very hard to move between the shoulder armor, given that most of the kibble on the helmet is protruding from the top, so it's mostly out of the way. Also worth noting, as you can see, there's so much chunk in the waist that would be really hard to fit a ball joint in there, but even then the swivel does wonders to make up for that. Those issues aside, the armor looks fantastic, with a simple, clean, cohesive color scheme and a great sense of style, and all the joints in the skirts, toes, and cape convey a great sense of motion that just makes him feel more real. To get a better sense of what I'm talking about, check out TG Omega's review of the Super Robot Chogokin Magic King. Try saying that a few times really fast. The cape on a figure like this can be used not unlike Magic King's beautiful wings. Back to the overall look of the figure though. The Emperor is a menace. He looks kinda like Sauron did in the Peter Jackson films, but as gaudy as some people may think the Dark Lord looked in the first scene, the look easily works for something that's intentionally cartoonish like this. And while the shoulders do kinda get in the way, I absolutely love how they look, and just how much they add to the crazy, powerful feel this thing has. The protrusions on the helmet even look like a sort of crown, and while some may think the cape is too bright and colorful to be appropriate for such a villainous-looking silhouette, I think it gives his darkly colored armor something nice to contrast against, and while it doesn't look scary, it looks like it was made for royalty, which was all too fitting for something named the Emperor. This guy isn't just some random grunt. He looks like a brutal warlord that would be the first to charge into battle and get the most kills like Vlad the Impaler. He's as imposing as he is deadly. One of my favorite details of all is a crystallized M in the chest, though I have no idea what it stands for, if it's even supposed to be an M. The symbol itself goes under a clear dome piece, which in turn goes under the other layers of the chest armor, and it looks really cool. On the original Emperor figure, it was a sticker. Yeah, they've really gone the extra mile with these hyperfunction figures. The plastic of the armor is harder in some places than in others, with the spikes on the shoulders being the softest parts that attach to the rest of the much harder shoulder plating, though I think this is a plus since it probably makes them less likely to crack or break off on the off chance that I may someday drop this figure. In fact, the connections between most of the components feel strangely soft, even if the connectors and the pieces themselves actually aren't. Everything fits together really snugly, and it doesn't feel like something that would just shatter or slide apart very easily. When all is said and done, it's a rugged little bot that looks the part and more than feels the part. Now before we end the review, I'm going to go over the accessories. The core skeleton model is completely unpainted, and it's left up to the customer to paint it as it's supposed to look, though I don't see the point since a core skeleton isn't that visually impressive to begin with, and it's going to be covered up most of the time anyway, isn't it? One thing that does drive me up a wall when it comes to a lot of LBX figures is the sheer multitude of stickers you need to put on these guys just to make them look more show accurate. I guess it can't be helped given how much more simple the builds usually are, but it really irks me how some of these guys are almost completely covered with stickers, and then there are some like Proto I that don't even have enough stickers, and don't look that good when they're finished. But in the case of this figure, there are very, very few stickers that you would ever need to put on. There's of course Skeleton's eyes, which I haven't bothered to apply for reasons I've already gone over, and his silver knuckles, which I haven't bothered to put on either because he looks good enough without them, and it really is such a small detail. I would have liked it if they had just made 4 more pieces to go over the knuckles, which would be molded to be a silver or gray colored plastic, but I can understand that this would make it harder to keep his hands together. These details might be an issue for some, but not for me. There is one other sticker sheet, which is just a bunch of random labels, such as the logo of Kamiya, the fictional producers of the Emperor from the games and show. I really don't like these because they ruin the mythical Dark Knight feel this guy has without them. They just make it look less special. Besides, these would actually make it look less show accurate. His giant 4-sided murder axe is something to behold, yet surprisingly light for something so big, and the figure has very little trouble holding it. The last of the stickers are those blue bits where the blades meet. The edges are protected by the width of the thick blades, so you won't have to worry about accidentally brushing against them and peeling them off or anything like that. The colors are well thought out, with the darker bits making the edges of the blades more pronounced, which may fool the eyes by making the axe look even bigger. And like his cape, the thing as a whole complements his darker armor. The overall look of the axe leaves quite an impression. This weapon is clearly made for quick hard blows and instant kills, to smash rather than slice, to make the Emperor's enemies drop like flies. Considering the Emperor's whole shtick is that he basically slays almost everything that comes his way with a single swing just seconds after their supposed fight starts, the weapon feels like it's part of his character, like anything else just wouldn't suit his lordship at all. And no, I don't care for that 6-sided missile-launching club thing he used later on, so I won't be buying or reviewing that, as cool as I know it sounds. There is one thing about the axe that bugs me, but we'll get to that. He also comes with a few extra hands, or rather palms, since they all snap onto the same pair of knuckles. Along with his fully curled fists, he also has 2 hands with a thumb stretched out along the handle of the axe, and the last hand is my favorite. The murder hand, as people call it, is what completes the look of the figure. As much character as this guy already has, I can understand some people looking at his static, narrow eyes and the exposed joints and see that it's just a soulless robot. And even in the source material, that's basically what these all are, save a rare few that take on a life of their own, be it out of their creator's hatred or whatever. I like how reserved and guarded the Emperor looks, but he looks his best with this hand. See, this hand says what his face cannot. He looks angry, like emotion is just flowing out of his gnarly fingers since his face is covered up. It's the most expressive part of him, and it shows what an aggressive killing machine the Emperor truly is once someone's gotten him started and set him off. This hand, along with the cape, tell a story. I do wish he had one just like it for the other side, but whatever, I guess they just really want him to be primarily right-handed. But since he can hold the axe with his left hand, well, a 6th hand would have been nice considering how the axe works. You see, the handle of the axe can be split and reformed through one enclosed hand, and that's basically it. You won't be able to make him actually hold it tightly with both hands at the same time, and like I said, there's no appropriate murder hand to wrap around the axe from the other side, making it kinda strange that they included an extra enclosed left hand at all. Whether or not any of that is an issue is up to you, but I'm just pointing it out. Overall, I really do like the hands that are included, though these are the ones that I find myself using all the time. I know I've already talked about the cape a lot, about the complementary colors and how its movability adds to his stance, but what I love most about it is the feel of the material it's made of. The capes on most LBX figures that have them are made of paper that you have to cut out yourself. This could so easily go wrong, and even after you've attached it to the figure, it could so easily be damaged that I just find it stupid. This cape is made out of cloth, and is already perfectly trimmed right out of the box. Not only is it pretty, but it feels nice, and it's much easier to move than paper, which I'd always be worried about folding or tearing or scratching myself with or something. There is one last accessory that I wish had been included since his figure is equipped for such a thing. A stand that he could sit on. As nice as it is to put this guy in crazy poses, I'd like to be able to leave him like that when I put him down, and a stand would be so useful for that. It doesn't bother me that much, but considering how far they've already gone with everything else that makes this figure so cool, I just wish they'd included that. But whatever, I'll just use a stand from some other figure that comes with one when I get my hands on more of these little dudes. While there are a couple of accessories I wish they had thrown in there to complete the package, and the absence of them makes it just shy of utter perfection, what you get is close enough, and I don't regret getting this figure one bit for anything. I love it for so many things. The smart, intricate assembly, the minimal use of stickers, the better materials, and all the other little touches used in the making of the hyperfunction figures really does make them a cut above the rest, and it easily blows the original Emperor figure out of the water. While the hyperfunction figures are more expensive than most LBX figures, it's money well spent. I just feel like this thing will last longer than the original Emperor would, and it makes a much better display piece if you want my honest opinion. Don't get me wrong, the designs and builds of the later lines get better and better, but as far as the first line goes, nothing beats the hyperfunction line's take on these classic characters, and there are 2 more of these special figures that I want to review. Pay there and make more. As for the Emperor's successors, I'm gonna make a pass. I'm not gonna get very many of these figures, and I'm just not interested in Xenon or Triton. I think Proto-Xenon looks amazing, with the horns and the wings and the wild hair. He's just so ghoulish, but he looks enough like the Emperor to feel like a fitting successor. But they never made a toy out of that, and the finalized version just doesn't impress me at all, with a slimmed down look, all the things I really liked about it missing, and that bizarre yellow axe thing that looks like something tried to eat it, which looks like such a downgrade of the first axe the Emperor has. The closest you'll ever get to seeing an actual proper Proto-Xenon toy is in these photos taken of a Xenon figure that was given an extensive overhaul by a dedicated fan, I think. See how much better that looks? So, yeah, pass on Xenon. And Triton, well, he's cool, really, but it just feels so far removed from this guy that, like I said, I'm being very selective with the few figures I will get, so pass. I may get my hands on Phantom sometime, though. Now that is a believable successor to the Emperor. But if they aren't somehow connected, then this image is extremely misleading. So yeah, the hyperfunction figures are amazing, and I wish there were more than 3. I would love to see a hyperfunction Proto-Xenon, or Odin, or Fenrir, or Pandora, or Ifrit, but these'll do. Anyway, that's it for this review. I should get Achilles in the mail in about a month, and I'll review him then, followed by Lucifer the next month, but I'll upload other content in the meantime, such as the next Spider-Man retrospective if I can help it. Toy reviews aren't really my thing, but I feel like taking time for a few of these because these figures are just so special and I want to show them off. The style of this review was mainly inspired by TG Omega's reviews, and I hope he sees this and is pleased with it. So, what'd you guys think of this first stab at this kind of review?